Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're joining us from. A lot of people have already come in. We want to thank you for the audience that is here. My name is Mona Okello. I am the Business Engagement Manager at Ngamia Haulers Platform, which is a company that is hosting this webinar today. So I'm particularly excited because it's a topic that I think many people have thought about, and it's been discussed in 2020, and we've been wondering, given the COVID situation, how have businesses been surviving? What have people been doing differently? So we're hoping that in this forum, you'll be able to pick up a few things from our very established panelists. So I'll just briefly introduce what we do here at Ngamia. We're a technological platform who connects service providers and consumers in the transport, logistics, and supply value chain. So the kind of products that we have are mobile applications. We have a customer application. We have a transporter application. We have a driver application. We also have the Ngamia marketplace, which is where different people can come and they can list their products so that our consumers are able to buy from them. We have recently worked on Ngamia Pay. It hasn't officially been launched, but we're looking at that. And our final product is also the Ngamia Commodity Tracker. So this is a tracker that enables you to know if you're in the transport or supply value chain, where can you get avocados from, where can you get tomatoes, onions, and all these things. If it's construction material, where can you get it? So we're also working on that. So we'll be launching a few of these next year, and we're hoping the audience here will be part of that journey with us. And now, before I introduce our panelists, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping rules. So today's webinar is being recorded, so I hope everybody is okay with that. And the reason we're doing this is because after this, you'll be able to revisit the content, you'll be able to share the conversation. For the people who are not able to come in, or if you know anybody who would benefit from this conversation, then you can share it with them. Secondly, we're using the hashtag Ngamia Africa on all our social media platforms. We're also using the hashtag growth hacking. So if you're joining us online, you can have those conversations with us using those hashtags. We also had requested the people send in their questions beforehand to social@ngamia.africa. So we managed to get a few questions from there. But for those who are in the meeting now, if you have any questions, feel free to send it on the chat box, and then we will sieve them through and then be able to answer a couple of them or all of them if we can. So I'll go straight into it. Today's contributors, of whom the videos are all on, I will start with the ladies. Rachael Atieno. Rachael is in the beautiful striped checked top. Rachael Atieno is an optimist and a lover of people. She's a founder and head baker at Cake Culture, a passion that she stumbled upon and has been in business in the last 4 years, but she's been passionate about it for the last 8 years. So she's all about exceptional bakes and loves to give her clients memorable experiences. So she's in the cake industry. Then we have Koki Oyuke with us. Koki helps creatives and ladies to beat imposter syndrome so they can share their work. So she does this through stories, through candid conversations and written work. Her mission is to inspire people to live rich, authentic lives, no matter what season they're in. So it will be very interesting to hear from you, Koki, given this season, this year, how you manage that. Then I'll move to the gentleman. I'll start with Cliff. Cliff is the current Chief Marketing Officer at Konectify Technologies. Skilled in brand development and public relations, he's also an enthusiast in corporate communication. He has 4 years experience in the market. Chris is passionate about personal and leadership development. He believes that the future of our young children heavily relies on how we develop them to think like entrepreneurs. And part of this conversation is about growth hacking. So how do entrepreneurs in the future think about that? He also is persuaded that people are always willing to pay for value, therefore develop value and people will pay you. So if you have a valuable product or a service, then people will pay for it. Finally, we have Don Gichane. Don Gichane is an avid entrepreneur with a passion for business. I think he's the most experienced in the field here, 20 years professional experience, spanning in real estate, spanning in horticulture, groundwater management, community development, and operations. Donald has spent the earlier part of his career in the US in an international NGO with operations in over 24 countries as an information system and media manager in Houston, Texas. So before taking up the role in Kenya. He is now responsible for planning and executing work at JD Construction Limited, a company that designs and builds homes in prime spaces in Kenya. Of his achievements, he also has run residential projects returning between 25 and 40% return on investment to investors from each of these projects. He holds a BBA in Information Systems Management, Mass Media, and a degree from Houston Baptist University, Texas. He's a devout Christian, and to mention that he's a husband to one, Nancy Marura Gichane, and a father to Maya, Mika, and Mikaela. So those are the people we'll be interacting with today. So karibu sana to the audience and also to our panelists. So I'll just start by talking about the topic. I don't know how many of us have heard about growth hacking and what that looks like. I don't think it has a particular one-liner or one sentence that we can say this is what it is. But in the space, it has a lot to do with how do you grow your company in a short time with a tight budget? What approaches do you use and objectives? So to start us off, we will just ask each of you to give us your experience in regard to the conception of your businesses and the product market fit. How has that worked for each and every one of you? So we'll start with Rachael and Koki, and then Cliff and Dawn. So in 5 minutes each, you could share with us. And like I said, if anybody has questions, you could put it in the question, in the Q&A below. So go ahead, Rachael, and then we'll move to Koki.
Thank you, Mona. It's an honor and pleasure to be part of this webinar today. As mentioned earlier, I'm Rachael, Atieno, founder of Cake Culture. I stumbled into the passion, but a few years later, I think I was in employment for 3 years, baking while in employment. So for me, the business started as a side hustle while still in employment. I remember my first order was actually from a colleague who insisted that I bake their son's cake. And it was just like, I don't know, I've never cleaned a cake, but I was like, we've eaten your cakes, because I'd go with cakes to the office, the things I try out. And like, your cakes are yummy, I want a cake for my boy. So that's how it started. Then now you figure out, okay, if I'm gonna make sales, how do you do this? How do you price? So I'd say at the beginning, I really didn't know how, like I just figured ingredients, what you come up with a price, or you look at what's already in the market, then you come up with a price. So 4 years back, I quit work. Let's just say the employment I was in was also, the company was going down. So at that point, I was like, do I look for another job or just build on this thing that I've already started? So I opted to take the risk. I think I should have probably even quit a year before, but I was too afraid to go in, because you're like, with employment, you're sure of a paycheck at the end of the month, your bills are sorted. But with business, there's the aspect of you have to grow through it. You have to stay a few months or years without a salary before the business can pay you and the like. So I took the risk, and I'm glad I did. It's been an interesting journey from getting clients. As I mentioned, I started with my colleagues, my family. And for the first 2 years, I think for me, client-wise, it was mainly through referrals. People who have eaten and tasted my product, and a friend to a friend to a friend. Then 2 years back, I was like, I'm not really making strides in the business. How do I get more clients? How do I grow the business? So I tracked down someone who had been in business for a while in the same baking sphere. And I tracked her down, and I was like, hey, I need help to know how to grow. Like, how do I get my business from where it is to something more? Because I need to meet my needs. My salary was not meeting my needs and all these things. So I worked with her for a year in a mastermind group. And that's why now I learned about sales, marketing, and all the like. But at the beginning, the problem we're solving is pretty much substandard stuff in the market. Because you would go and people would complain, oh, dry cake, this cake, and just showing people that there is better cake, and guys didn't know this, so that's what you are giving. Yeah, so in a nutshell, that's how the journey began. And in the last 2 years, I've actually had people work with me to grow the business to where it is now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rachel, for that. I will have a few questions for you guys after this. Koki, go ahead and share your story.
Hi, as shared, I'm Koki from Kizuri Books. Essentially, I started with in the publishing field and also being an author and a speaker around about 10 years ago, 2010. And I started by editing my mom's books. My mom has written about, she's on her 9th book. So she started me on it from a while back. And I loved reading books and I still do. So that passion got cultured. I never thought I would do this for work. So it's funny how it took me a long time even to be able to write my own book, but I've edited numerous books. Designed, I taught myself design because I had to also be able to do it for my own book. So I stumbled into the publishing business. Honestly, it's kind of the best thing that happened to me. Starting out with my mother, then wanting to write my own book, not having the money that was needed by the people that I wanted to design my book. So if it's a growth hack, this is one, do it yourself. And that's always very hard, but I had to teach myself how to design. And it didn't take that much time. It took me 8 focused months and I was able to design my own book cover. So most people will be like, oh my gosh, this book doesn't look very Kenyan. It doesn't look Kenyan. I don't know. Please understand, I mean, well, I love Kenya, I'm Kenyan. But people are like, it doesn't look Kenyan. It looks international. And that was kind of the intentionality that I wanted to have with the work that I do. So that's how it kind of started. I stumbled into it. Before that, I was designing jewelry, but then, like I told you, I was doing some publishing work for my mom. I used to do her books from cover to cover, but then, I mean, it's my mother. She only started paying me, I think just as a, okay, this chick is really professional. Let me not just have my friends and people who are colleagues or guys paying me. And other people in her network paying me for the work. So she was like, you know what, I'll also pay you, treat you like a professional. But honestly, it was just a mom and I thing. But it's really grown. For me, just like for Rachel, it's been through referrals, but then mostly my work ends up speaking for itself. I think a good thing in my business is, as an editor, when you're doing everything from the credits, you can name drop your stuff everywhere from the back to the front. So that's really been very big and good for me. Product market fit. I think when it comes to publishing and reading, we always have this assumption that Kenyans don't read. I personally don't believe that. I do not subscribe to that. We read newspapers, we read tweets. So it's right. I believe people, it's when you write things that are a bit too formal, like Fasihi and what's this other one? The literature in school, I hated it personally. I wanted to read something exciting. But you see, for someone else, that's what they want to read. So I have found my own network. Even with my editing and publishing, I tend to do more story-centered work rather than, how do I say this? Academic. I always tell people off the bat, it's not that I can't do academic, but then I will make your book amazing when I get to do it. If it's your story or if you're bringing in a bunch of stories. So with that aspect and everyone believing in their stories, it's been interesting. I'm sure I'll be able to share with your questions more about my journey through that in 2020. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Koki. Dawn, we can go ahead to you.
Sorry, I'm unable. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
okay,
we can hear
excellent. I was unable to unmute myself. Thank you for having me on. Yes, my name is Don, and when it comes to business, I can say that I was kind of from a very early on in school, even from I think it was primary school, I knew I just liked business, and I don't know if it's because of the tribe I'm from, but I just felt that business was just in my blood. All through high school, I loved commerce classes and stuff like that. Then on to uni, and uni was a very interesting one for me because I had the opportunity to go study abroad. I got to uni, and the first day I was trying to figure out what do I really want to study. And in America, I came to realize that you could actually enroll and under a degree that is called undecided. And so I enrolled for an undecided course. But of course, I knew where my inclination was. So even when I went through school, I ended up, studying an MIS degree, which was under business, and also did mass media. Fast forward after that, I worked for a NGO, as you had read on the on my resume there, which I was wondering who you were reading about. But then I went through that, and at some point I worked for this NGO for a couple of years, maybe 10, 15 years is really the time I gave them. And, business just came calling. So one time I said, one of the things that I've admired through life is the construction industry. And so I set up my first construction company in 2008, I believe it was. And, I said, look, I didn't study architecture. I didn't know everything in it. But I'll tell you an interesting story. To start me off, when I returned back home, I moved in first with my parents. And my parents, where they lived, they had this little space outside of the house where they said, you know what, when you come in and you're still trying to figure your way around, you can use up that space. So when I came and checked it out, I said, oh man, this thing looks really not very up to date. So I decided to redo that whole space. And then after redoing the space, a friend of my father's was visiting my father and came and saw what I had done. And he asked me, do you do this for a living? And that was the very first time I ever thought about construction. That same guy, a couple of years later, caused me to register a company because he wanted me to build for him. It didn't happen. We didn't agree. But about 2-3 months after that registration, I got my first construction job, which, I'm very proud to say was a nice big house. It was a 30 million shilling contract. I had never done this before, but I just had the passion. And I got people together. I got a partner who was an architect. I went out and hired all the professionals I needed. And the house is still standing today, and the clients are very happy. So my point around this is, for me, there's definitely, I'll say this in Africa and specifically here in Kenya, one of the things that has been very, what's the right word, that has been really esteemed very valuable is owning a piece of property or a plot and then eventually building on it. It's just a cultural thing. People just love to do that here. And so I saw the niche, I saw the market that was available. And I asked myself, what niche will I cut into this particular market? Of course, there are many contractors on the ground. I looked through that and tried to figure out then what is my market niche. And we sat down and brainstormed and came up with a few ideas around that. And in a nutshell, we've been building ever since. And now we are moving more from being contractors into moving into development, meaning now we are putting a lot of properties in the market for sale. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Don. I think your part of this the discussion falls more on customer retention, optimization, and a lot of success. Like I said, when we began, your CV is quite intense. So you are not like in the startup, but you'll walk us through how that journey had been. And then for Cliff, maybe you could just tell us briefly, and then we could move on.
First of all, thank you so very much for having me. It's a pleasure. My name is Cliff Alambo. I work at Konectify Technologies. We incorporated the company back in 2008. So I went to Multimedia University, studied corporate communication, and graduated back in 2015. And to be honest, I was passionate about starting a business, but by the time I was graduating, I was very naive. I didn't even know the process. So the first year, that is 2016, after my graduation, was a very difficult year for me, extremely very difficult. I even tried sending jobs. I think in the entire year of 2016, I only received 2 feedback, which were regrets emails. So it was a very difficult journey for me. So back in 2017, I began to change the way I approach life. And by that, I mean, I knew it's possible I may not get a job. So I need to position myself to do something. And that's when I began to have, I'm grateful to God for some of my friends and mentors who gave me the courage to step out into the world of entrepreneurship. So in 2017, I volunteered to work with Beulah IT. It's a company that's based in Westlands. So I went there as a volunteer. It was sort of internship, but then in the sales department. So I did some bit of sales for like 6 months. I only used to receive transport. So for me, the fact that I could leave home, still living with my parents, the fact that I could leave home and go to somewhere and then come back home, it boosted my confidence. But then it was through that experience that I began to understand how business really works. Because as much as I was involved in sales, I could engage myself in other departments. So by the end of 2017, a friend of mine, his name is Fred, invited me to his company. It was called Tinvestors. So there I met Peter Mwangi, who later on came to become my partner in Konectify. So when we were talking with Peter, we noticed that in the software industry, we have programmers. Programmers are linear in their line of thought. That is, they can develop anything as long as you define for them what needs to be developed. So when we were discussing with Peter, we noticed that most programmers are not good with customer experience. And we decided to start Konectify because we felt like my background is corporate communication. Peter's background is law. So none of us is a programmer, actually. None of us does coding. So we felt like we had an upper hand because we were able to think like the end user and still be able to think like a business person. That is, we can create a solution without thinking like a programmer and then engage a programmer to implement that for us. That's how Konectify was birthed. So Konectify is a technology company. We bring tech solutions to businesses. So we pride ourselves by the fact that we are able to develop a concept without thinking in a specific linear line of thought. So that is in 2018. That's when we started. The first few months, it was hard because every time you meet a client, they want a portfolio. So what we did, we started doing some work for ourselves just to build a portfolio. And then after building our own portfolio with our own work, we were able to secure our first client. Then one thing led to another. We've enjoyed primarily referrals. So when a client comes to Konectify, for example, he has to meet us. We prefer to do a physical meeting, then hear him out, then think through with him, then get our team of programmer to implement the solution. We are currently 5. 2 of us, me and Peter, we are like the main guys, and then we have a team of programmers that we have occasional meetings just to discuss what's trending, how can we position ourselves. I think I'm not good of a storyteller, but I really hope that captures my journey in a nutshell. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that. A software company being run by a legal person and a communications person, that's fascinating, which will then bring us back to the conversation of, most of you have talked about how you branded yourself and how you've thought outside the box. Cliff, for example, you've spoken about you being in communications. Your partner is a legal person. I like what you said about the linear thinking and multi-skill set, because there's also this notion that some of the best managers or some of the best people who start an organization is not necessarily in the same line of work. So unless you're a doctor, well, your friend is a lawyer, is not even, practicing law, maybe not directly, but within the company. So I like what we're talking about and how you've managed to brand yourself. So what we'll go into now is based on your stories. What has been your customer acquisition channel like? I know most of you have talked about referrals, but what other channels have you used? Were you in your growth process testing everything? By testing everything, I mean, were you looking at social media analytics? Were you looking at emails? Were you looking at billboards or TV, depending on which space you're in? What channels did you use to acquire the customers that you have? So we'll go again in a round. Rachel? Rachel, just unmute yourself. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, for the first few years, it was referrals, as mentioned earlier. But over time, you realize that I got to learn about social media marketing, especially through the mastermind that I was in, and how sponsored posts work and how to do it right. Like it felt like a whole math. I love math though, but it felt like a whole class in it. But I'm glad I learned that, because it's okay. Yes, you have referrals, but not everyone. If you wanna have a bigger reach, then you have to go the extra mile. I learned the importance of having a budget for marketing, because when you're starting off, you're not thinking, do I need a budget to market my product? So that's one thing I've learned through this time, like having a budget for marketing, doing social media ads and posts. Then once in a while, having runs, like product runs, or offering probably offers. Okay, they say Kenyans love free things. I guess it's a fact. I'm Kenyan, I guess I can figure it out. But it's also part of just introducing your product to people who've not met it. Because if someone sees something, they're like, okay, this is good, let me try it out. So I think apart from referrals and social media marketing and having offers, that's pretty much the match days I've covered. But also there's a key bit about how to retain the customers, or I guess that's the next conversation. Do I pause there?
Yes, pause there. We'll talk about retention and optimization after this. So what we're trying to establish is once the customers have been acquired and they've been activated, the channels they use, what ways do you retain them, and then what ways do you get them? That's the way you get the revenue. So we'll go in steps like that. So then Koki, you can tell us a bit about the same. What channels have you used, and then after that we'll go into retention. How have you managed that, and especially this year?
For me, initially, it was through my website, but back then people used to call them blogs before blogs became trashy. So it was through my website and then a newsletter. goodness, then from that point we went into, because I started having speaking engagements when I'd go for a speaking engagement, carrying my book, people being able to see my product, social media. I think I learned about it, the marketing aspect, the paid posts around possibly 2017. And that was actually really big. Back then, it was before a lot of the what I don't like about social media is they keep changing algorithms. I don't try and figure it out. So I don't know if others will say that they've noticed that, but everything keeps changing. I have learned by making sure my engagement with, if you find me online, if you find me in person, if you find that I'm the same person online as I am in person, and you feel like a friend. I know maybe it's not the same for everyone else, but that's what's working for me. If you feel like you know me, you feel like my friend, a friend has something, you want to support your friend, and you tell a friend to tell a friend. I kid you not, it sounds very basic, but I've seen super huge growth this year because of that. And of course, I know it has the challenges for when friends become clients and all that, because, you know, when we work on bigger, large scale projects, of course, there's that place for the balance. But for me, when I moved it on to more people, friend-centered, I think, who is this? Is it Seth Godin who says, have at least 100 true fans? For my business, that works. But that's getting into the next, I think, portion. So I'll stop there.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Koki, for that. Dawn, on your end, customer acquisition channels and how you manage that.
Thanks, Mona. For me, you know, with the industry that that we're talking about now, in real estate, you know, for myself, a lot of it has really had to be word of mouth, because when you're starting out, the truth is, anybody who's trying to get into any level of construction, it is quite it's quite capital intensive, and so it's not something that you want to take chances on. It's not trying to figure out which is the best meal in town or which is the new restaurant in town. It's quite capital intensive, and so for that reason and that reason alone, a lot of the times people like to get referrals before they can move into a particular direction. However, I must say that we've been in a space where we've also gone into social media marketing. At some point, we had started some blogs just to be able to reach out to a lot more people. Just, the awareness of this is what we do. Still, that doesn't negate the fact that people will still have to do a lot of due diligence on you and your company and your firm, just to understand what it is that you've done in the past. Again, it is also a very closed. It's a very closed community, and in the construction field, you're either good or you're not good. It's just one of those. And if there's one thing that we're very familiar with, all of us, I'm sure you've heard this before, man, that fundi is crazy, so everyone looks at this construction field, and especially something you don't understand becomes a very a bitter pill to take. And so yes, social media has helped some. We've used emails and reaching out to people. We've tried, obviously, going into some of those, being able to go into some of the, especially when there's a program somewhere you can sponsor something, just to get the awareness out there. But referrals by far have gotten us the most clients we've had.
All right, thank you, Dawn, for that. Cliff, on to you.
Well, for us as Konectify, back in 2018, when we started, I mentioned that one of our biggest challenge was getting clients because we do not have previous work to show. So what we did, we developed some work of our own and then used it as a portfolio. We actually also partnered with someone just to do something for them for free to build a portfolio. For Konectify, to be honest, email marketing has been our biggest channel. So what we do, for example, like when I was preparing for this segment, I actually tried to check the panelist profile just to see what they do. I checked on Ngamia website. I checked on Cake Culture. So that's what we used to do. We first of all check your work, and then see where we can improve, and then draft a proposal, and then email you with recommendations of where we can improve. Because like I said, we believe that the moment you present value to someone, they're willing to pay. So with that understanding, what we used to do is we still do that actually. It's our main channel. We've not had any client from social media so far. So we've not invested a lot in our social media. Social media for us is a way of just establishing a presence. But when it comes to clients, we've relied heavily on email marketing. Like I said, we draft a proposal with what we would do for you if you gave us work. And then networking, 2018, 2019 especially. For 2020, it has been a challenge because of the COVID pandemic. But for 2019, we used to have these business forums we could attend, interact with people, then one-on-one, word of mouth. We speak to people about what we do. We just build relationships. To be honest, as Konectify, we believe in building relationships, and then those relationships eventually convert into businesses. So for me, networking, word of mouth, and email marketing has been working well for us so far. Thank you.
All right, I like that. So I think everybody has shared different things that work for people differently. So I'll just tell us like a brief story before we move to the retention and optimization. So growth hacking is like a very unconventional thing that people are doing. I think it's a term that was coined in around 2010. It's arguably very close to marketing, digital marketing, but it's really just the process in between. So it's a combination of art and science. So art, understanding how your product or your service works, whichever field you're in, and then science, knowing how to measure it. So then it becomes very important what kind of data metrics you're using and all these things. So let me give an example of a hot dog eating contest. So people are participating in a hot dog eating contest, and everybody, a regular person, would just start eating the hot dogs, without necessarily thinking how, when, where, and what. So you just start stuffing them in, and you start thinking, how many of them can I get in at the same time? But there's an example given about this one particular person who literally thought about the steps as to how he's going to do this. So he separated the sausages from the buns. Then he ate the sausages first, or the frankfurter, whatever was in between. After he finished all the sausages, whatever number they were, he then dipped the buns in water. So he dipped the buns in water to make them a bit soft. So this reduces the amount of chewing and the amount of, So this is a process that can only come from a growth mindset. And that's what we're trying to discuss today and instill to our listeners, so that you have to test whatever experiments fit and they fit. So what works for somebody else won't work for the next person. So this is how growth hackers think every day. Put yourself in the hot dog eating contest, in that situation. How would you be able to deliver that and become a winner? So let us think a bit about that. And then we'll move on now to Rachael again. Don had spoken about partnerships. So maybe let me start with Don, because he spoke about having to get a partner to speak to and then join with them. Cliff as well, you have a partner in the field. So how, in terms of retention and success, how do partnerships work? Because for example, at Ngamia, like I said earlier, we're a platform that connects service providers to consumers. The transporter, the end user needs insurance. How do I plug that into the system? Somebody else needs, we're working with the IPRS, for example, which is under Ministry of Interior, Integration Population System. How do we do our KYC and we know who's on board? You integrate or partner with banks. How does that work? So let's talk a bit about partnerships in line with startups and growth and retention, so that you're not walking it alone. So it can be startups in terms of you need an API to integrate with somebody. It can be startups partnerships in terms of skill set. So you need somebody who has that skill that you don't have. You're a salesperson, but you need the architect. You're a designer, a writer, but you need the salesperson. So yeah, let's discuss that portion of retention, because I think it's come up also. Rachael, I think you also have a partner. So we'll start with Dawn, then we'll go Rachael, Koki, and then finish with Cliff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mona. Partnerships has been one of those areas in business that you have to kind of think hard about. Now, there's obviously different levels of partnership when you're talking about business. There's partnerships based on shareholding. There's also partnerships based on works that needs to get done. And so, for instance, if I was, I'm in construction, and in construction there are various different components to it. So there's the design phase of construction, and then there's the execution phase. So let me just, put those in just two different silos there. Now, the whole design phase has, a completely different set of people, because the people who do the design work are not necessarily the people who do the implementation. And so you can go into partnerships, for instance, with people who that's all they focus on is design. And you could be one who does the implementation. And so if a client comes up to you and says, look, I'd like you to design and build for me, then you would go to your partner that designs, and then you would come and do the implementation. That's one kind of partnership. Partnerships are important. Now, I told you that I have been in the construction arena, and now I'm moving more now into development. What is development? Now I'm looking at focusing on providing products for the market and not necessarily building for a particular client what they want. Now, it's, same construction, same almost set of parameters, but we're looking at a completely different product here. In construction, and what I have done in the past as far as construction is concerned, I have a partner for that. But now that I'm moving into development, I've had to go out and seek different partners. Why? Because I'm looking also for people who have had experience in developing properties, and also people who will bring something to the table. I'll give you a case in point. One of my recent businesses that we started is one called Beulah. And Beulah City is supposed to be building affordable homes in Kenya. So I've gone out and found, what do I need? Or I sat down and thought, what do we need in order to be able to build these affordable homes? So we found people who've been in the space, either in the marketing side, understand what the market looks like on the ground. I've gone out and found someone who's been doing development in the past. One of my partners today has been building in Dubai for the last 15 years. Born Kenyan, went out to the UK for studies, and then relocated to the UK and was just building and developing very high-end homes over there, and now has recently moved back to Kenya. They understand something about development, but then also for me, I'm not looking for someone who just understands development, but is able to bring something to the table. What could he bring to the table? There was a lot of contacts that he had with different banks, different institutions, different financial partners who can come on board. And then not only that, I don't want to build the regular home everyone is building. I want to do something that is at a higher level. So for me, I had to go out and find somebody with the skill sets to be able to deliver a product that is not just called affordable. It's a place I want to live myself. And so to be able to bring a product that has, again, a niche. How many developers are there in Kenya? Many. Thousands of homes are being built every day. But what will differentiate me from every other developer? And so on the partnership side, you've got to understand first what your product is, what you're trying to put in the market, and then go out and get the skill set you do not have and bring them on board, either employing them or partnering with them or being shareholders together. That's what I'd say. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Dawn, for that insight. Rachael, you have a partner, I think, at Cake Culture. How are you managing that as your business partner, but also other partnerships? Because you're in a space that has, I don't even know how your competitive advantages stand out because it's cake, but how do you work that around?
So I've I've had a partner for 3 years now, and how we actually started off was, it was gradual. So I'd introduced a different product, toasted muesli. It's a breakfast cereal, and she'd gotten clients, and like, okay, so we are really good friends at the other thing. So I figured she's in Embakasi, I'm on Gong Road, so you can actually make this and sell it on that end. So we gradually moved from the muesli cereal to now the cake. And you see, for most people, when you're ordering a cake, you want, if you can reduce your delivery cost, for instance, you're like, oh, I need cake, you're far, I need someone who's nearer. So we figured we'd cover more ground in Bakassi and Gong Road, and you're sorted. So that's how we started off. So we've been partners for 3 years. So the thing I've learned about partnership, I think I've learned the hard way. Number one, especially if you're partnering with friends, I don't think, for us, we did not define the partnership from the beginning. So there are those blurry lines whereby, okay, I know it's my company, so who's boss? I'm boss, we are friends, we're really good friends, you know. I'm boss, we are friends, thin lines, we want this, I don't want this. So actually, at the beginning of this year, we really had to like sit and have a conversation. And the other thing is knowing how long is this partner in it with you. Because you have people who ideally will support your business for the long haul. So by the time you're involved in someone in your business, no, is this short term or long term? In this sense, there are people who will be there for the long haul because they're adding the different parts. There are people who they're bigger than your business. Like in my case, my partner is way bigger. Like she has her own dream, her own vision, and it would be unfair for her to speak with me, yet there's a whole dream within her that needs to be built. So we got to that realization, and it was like, you know what, it's time to build you. It's been 3 years, it's been amazing, and we're actually in that process of, okay, so how do you build yourself? So I would say we are actually in that starting place. But one thing I really, really learned is no for how long this partnership is, and define from the word go, especially for friendship, because it can be a bit murky and uncomfortable, and it got that for me. And now I know better. I guess through the process you actually learn, okay, now if I'm going to get into partnership again, define it from the beginning. This is what you're doing, this is what you're getting into, these are the lines. If you need to sign something, so that at least you move forward with clear direction of this is what we are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So partnerships with friends, for those in smaller scale companies, what that looks like and the challenges that would come with that. So we have to be very keen and seek discernment on the direction. Koki, in your space, how has that worked for you?
For me, it's more partnership with family. Like I said, my mom started me off having seen that I'm good at editing and I like reading. So over time, because she decided to start teaching people how to write books, because people would always wonder, how is it that you're able to come up with a book every year? So from 2010 up till this year, 9 books, and everyone's wondering how you're able to do that. And she saw the gap where she's able to teach people certain key aspects, and I'm able to teach people the parts in writing books and sharing your story and putting yourself out there when you're talking about, because many times with a book, it needs you to be a brand. So speaking about it, speaking about yourself, how to position yourself, put yourself out there. So that's the place that I came in to fill her class on new authors. So with family, again, this is my mom. Because our roles are very distinct, there's no overlap. I do the designs for the people who want to have their books designed, their books edited, covers done. And then I also teach them certain aspects you can do when it comes to media. Because in my experience, because my husband is in media, I was able to know how to connect with, how to even write a pitch for like, hey, I have this book, or just the certain shows you can go to, certain ways you can plug your product in it. So I come in on that part. So that's been very helpful. In the past, actually right now, I'm not so keen on getting another partner. It would only be, I do know, like on a full-time basis, with shares and all that. What I would do is when I get overwhelmed, I have certain key designers that I have used in the past that I would be able to engage to help me with workload. But on an ownership basis, just like Rachael shared, I know how that can get murky, because also in this case, it's friends. I wouldn't want to get those lines crossed. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Koki. So we're in the same line with the friends and family and what that looks like. Cliff, on your end, and not just with the partner that you're in business with, but people who you've had to do business with within your space at Konectify.
Thank you. As you would imagine, having myself from a communication background and having my partner from law, the background of law, then you can imagine Konectify as a business heavily relies on partnerships. I'd say that was the first level of partnership, me and my partner, to develop the company, conceive it. The second level of partnership for us is with specific programmers that we engage when we receive workload. They're very specific. We know them. So whenever we have work, we connect with them. So I'd say that has been a sort of partnership for us. And then we've tried to position ourselves as Konectify such that every client we serve, we end up establishing a sort of partnership. For example, when a client comes and we have this meeting and the client is telling us about this concept that he wants us to develop, the business idea he has, he wants us to develop it into a software, a mobile application or something. We partner with the client through thinking through the business. And like I mentioned, that is our advantage, me and my partner, because we don't think like programmers first. We think like business people and customers. So when a person comes with a business idea, we are interested in looking at what is the value. Even before we commit to develop it, we have to work with them, sort of refine the idea if it's not refined. But even after the development process, we still partner with them because they are trends. And whenever we are aware of a trend that affects a certain business, one of our clients' business, we connect with them, we communicate, and we are able to improve and adapt with them. So most of our clients actually, to be honest, most of the clients we've served before end up becoming partners in that capacity. So I'd say for us, partnership has been very strategic. We've also partnered with certain NGOs. We do some work for them in giving back so that it's sort of CSR. We partner with specific organizations. So when they have events, we are there, we support. I'd say those partnerships have also boosted our brand because brand visibility. Those partnerships have placed us strategically to a place where we are able to be visible and they benefit from us because of what we do for them. So I think in that light, partnerships have been a way to develop us as Konectify. I don't think we would be where we are without those kind of strategic partnerships, to be honest.
Thank you, Cliff, for sharing. I can also our own example here of at Ngamia and how partnerships have helped. The thing in Kenya is sometimes you're so small. People don't want to listen to you at the beginning of your kabiashara and whatnot. But there's particular brands that you then partner with and they kind of boost. So I do agree. If you're just starting up and you know somebody who would be, willing to help carry you through that process, it makes a lot of sense. here at Ngamia, it's corporate. So it's obviously corporate clients who we've identified and we've looked at, whether they're in the media, whether they're in the transport industry, whether they're in, whether it's associations. And I can truly say that part of this has been our growth hacking, because having those partnerships then puts us on a different level. So now that we're speaking about just, retention, in the conversation, we've been able to establish how you got your traffic and users on board, able to establish how, you're managing to retain them. And I want to throw the last spanner in the works. How and when did you break even? Because again, when you're starting your own business, it's very capital intensive. I know there's no particular time frame or duration. It could be months, the industry you're in, it could be years, it could be, So again, Rachel, in line, let's share a bit of what that looks like. Did you get to a point where you're like, I can't do this thing, I'm done, I'm out. this thing is not working? Did you make it at the third year? I mean, Ngamia, we are 1 year old, so I will not comment because it's been very but I have the hope that we are, we're going to get there, and that's the thing. So how has that journey been in terms of just breaking even and the kind of revenue that you're making now, and when you are able to start making profits?
If I could speak on the retention bit, I guess it goes without saying that your product has to be consistent through and through. I remember the first years I would repeat, there's a particular flavor, the passion chiffon, that I almost gave up on because it kept flopping and flopping. Like today to be good, to the other day not. But just because I insisted, I was like, this flavor is really amazing. If I can just hack it, it would be amazing. And it's ended up being like one of the best seller. I think it's stuck as the best seller for the past few years, since its inception. But the thing is, as you give out whatever product, for us it's cake. So if I bake a cake, and I've actually trained, there's a cousin of mine I work with now who I've trained to bake as well. Thanks to COVID, she's home. Universities are closed, so she's still helping out. But even her, she knows, like, you bake a cake, it's not at par, you repeat, even in part of her training and her working through the bakes. There is no, I think at times we worry too much about the minimal cost. I tell my friends, don't worry about losing money as long as your client is satisfied, because you will take the cake out, it's not okay. But at the end of the day, you don't just lose one client, you lose several, because your name will go out like, that person. So don't be afraid of losing money as long as you're giving your clients the best. You'll always recover. Money is there today, tomorrow gone, and it's a fluctuation, but you learn through the process. So that's key. You don't give out what is substandard in any way. And as for breaking even, I think the first 1 year or past 2 years, I didn't really pay myself. Actually, the first year I didn't pay myself, because at that point you're trying to build a business. You're trying to get equipment that you need. Because I think for 2-3 years, I actually got my oven earlier this year, my commercial oven this year. So before that, I was using my mom's oven, and you're saving up to buy these things and all. And it took, and even now that I actually earn a salary, it's still not at the place I want it to be. But what I'm grateful for is that over the years, there has been growth. So of course, for you to know there has been growth, you have to have your records in place. You have to know what money comes into the business, what's for the business, pay yourself separately, do not mix finances, the basics of accounting, And as much as there has been growth over the years, at least I can pay myself. It's not at par yet. So the business itself, yes, has broken even in terms of ingredients and sales. But for me to earn an ideal salary, I guess it goes back to increasing my sales. And one way of doing that is, apart from marketing more, I'm now looking into increasing my product line. Like, what other things that are complementary to what I do that can add to what it is that I offer to clients. So, like, for instance, there's the muesli that I mentioned, the breakfast cereal. And now I'm looking into lactation bakes. Actually, I'm passionate about being a doula. For those who don't know who a doula is the person who walks with a pregnant woman through the labor process. And it came as an idea from a friend who just got twins. And she was like, I'm buying these lactation cookies. You should actually try them out. And I was like, yeah, that's a good venture. So I'm actually now testing, and I have the perfect guinea pig who needs enough milk to feed her twins. So it's just thinking through how do I add to what already I have to increase the revenue. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. I like that diversification of the product to stay in the market, and also of your skill set based on what you're saying about the mothers and the lactation cookies. So that's, I think, is key. So how do we diversify our products? How do we upsell? How do we, you're selling chips, how do you sell soda? Or you're selling fries, how do you make it larger? I like that. So thank you for that. You've also mentioned that consistency is key. And more importantly, that we shouldn't be afraid of losing money. I think that's a very good one. It's one that many people struggle with, because you're like, let me just make this money quickly end at of the product getting out there and not delivering properly. So thank you for sharing that. Koki, revenue?
For me, it took around 2 years to be able to make profit, not even break even. The reason for this was initially, most people didn't see the value of what it is that I was bringing to what I was offering as a service. So we'd always get stuck in the, I'm thinking about it when it comes to my costs. And I knew my costs weren't high. So of course, when you have that concern for, is it that I'm too affordable or that I'm too expensive? So I was able to make a profit when I found the right clients, the ones who, honestly, I'm very grateful. In 2020, I haven't necessarily been asked how much does it cost with a, hey, let's cut this, let's do that. What I had to do was to come up with, this is what actually helped me. I used to have individual costs for, this is how much it costs to design your cover. This is how much it costs to edit. This is how much it's going to cost to put your book on Amazon. This is how much it's going to cost to do all of that. So of course, the integrated cost for the whole offering, which is more appealing because you get around 4 things at once, would be more attractive. So that's what helped shift things for me, because people would be like, oh, for that, I see value. And it's true, because when you take it individually, unless you only need me to do perhaps your cover or to edit your book, it ends up being more expensive when you take maybe 2 items rather than take everything. So that's the thing that shifted things for me, being able to offer the whole works and being able to say you'll be able to get your work in maybe 2 weeks or a month, depending on how much you're looking to get done. If it's the whole book, maybe a month, depending on how quick you're able to respond and do the corrections. So that's what was able to shift for me. I pray for this to be everywhere.
Koki, kindly unmute yourself.
Sorry, it's because I'm getting a call.
Okay.
Sorry, I always say I want someone to get I want everyone who's in business to get the same experience, because many times you have the challenge of cost. Cost, of course, is a huge challenge, but again, cost is something that can make or break your business. But getting people who see the value, you're not too expensive, you're actually priced right, and people see the value. Again, like I shared before, I do my best to make sure that my work stands out on an international platform. So I had spent months and months, almost practically a year, researching what is it that is needed for optimization of your cover when it's online, especially on Amazon. So being able to offer all that, and even if it's just editing, knowing so much about tone and what you're trying to share with your book. So for me, the biggest shift was the costing, getting the costing, but then getting clients who don't argue about cost.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Koki. I completely agree with that. I'm on a platform where we have a bidding process for customers. And you can't exactly pick the phone and say, hi, Mona, can I this and this at this cost? So I totally understand when you speak about pricing and getting that right. Dawn, you can go ahead and tell us briefly, and then Cliff.
Yeah, thanks. When it comes to business and also, the real essence behind going into business is obviously to make money. That's one of the main reasons. Now, it is not the only reason. There are people who go into it just for the passion, and those people actually get more fulfillment than going in to make money. Now, when it comes to breaking even in the construction industry, as you may very well know, between 20 and 30% is what you make on a typical job. And so off the bat, as you start out, you're probably already somewhere on break even. And if you're efficient enough, you will make between the 20 and the 30%. Now, that's good and dandy, but that's not the bottom line. I want to give you a case where I learned a very valuable lesson. And I like something, I believe it was Rachael who said about be ready to lose money and keep your client happy. There was one time years ago, I went into a contract with a friend of mine, and my business partner at the time felt that the need to do his, my friends, my business partner felt the need for us to take my friend's job, and it was a commercial space, a commercial office. And we went in to do it. And from the get-go, I told my partner, I'm not for this job. I mean, I can sense that this thing is not going to end up well because, numbers never lie. Once you get to the place where you've designed a product, you know exactly what it is that you want to put out into the market, you go back and sit down with BQs and it'll tell you what the cost is for doing or producing that particular job. Now, I don't think it's a Kenyan problem, but I have seen it with a lot of Kenyans where you come with a gold requirement, but then you're operating from a copper budget. And so those two never quite meet. It becomes a very tough place to be able to fit this grand plan into this small budget. And so anyway, we got into the job. I told my partner, I'm just going to ride on his faith as far as that particular job is concerned. And, one of the other beauties about doing commercial spaces like I have been involved with in the past is the quick turnaround time. And the reason why that is that there's very little sentimental value when it comes to building your office or fitting out a space that you need to work in. That's completely different from a residential home where someone comes and says, this kitchen is much smaller than I thought it was supposed to be. Let's move some walls. And you're out there for, 1.5 years building this home. So on the commercial space, the turnaround is quite fast. And also you burn money equally as fast. So we got into this job. Somewhere in the middle of the job, obviously the rubber meets the road, the money is not enough. The client, is really pushing you down, so we got to the place I was avoiding from the get-go. Long story short, we went back into pocket to finish his fit out. But we got to the place where we said, you know what, we've started the work, we can't leave it halfway. We're not going to be known as those contractors who, take off at night, pull out all the equipment or do whatever it is you're going to do. We're not going to be that person. And then it obviously complicates the matter further when, this is your friend you're actually doing the work for. So anyway, we finished the work and everything. Of course, that strained the relationship a little bit, but we said, you know what, let's get it over and done with. We finished the work. It was obviously a pain point for me and my partner, more for me because I kind of had seen it in the beginning. But something very interesting happened. the building where we were building for my friend was bought out by this group. And after about 2 months, I get a phone call and someone calls me and says, look, I've looked through this building. We're the new owners. And there's one little office that you did that we really, really like. And we would like to give you some work. Could you meet me? So we met up with the guy. And after a 1.5 year relationship with these guys, we ended up fitting out 4 floors of that building. Now, coming from a very small space, that was a pain point that we burnt our fingers. We ended up getting maybe 20, 30 times over what we initially went in there for. And that taught me what Rachael was saying. Sometimes running after the money is not as important as keeping a client, and more specific, giving the right product at the end of the day, because that product spoke for us when we were not there to speak for it. So thanks, Mona.
Thanks, Don, for that. I also have a similar story on that. A gentleman who walked into our office, and he's the one who was, doing our furniture and the things that are in the Ngamia office. And he said to my boss, I need you guys to come with me somewhere because I have a client who needs exactly what you guys have. So at that point, of course, we were like, who is the client? And so somebody came into our office, that workmanship, just an individual, and he said he wants the same thing. So I hear you on what you're saying about if he had not put in the work the way it was supposed to have been done and to the T of it, then the referral could even come from somebody you don't know. But after that, then, because I have a question on this referral, I think it's on the group. So before we go into the Q&A, Cliff, you'll finish it out for us. And then there's a couple of questions that guys have asked.
Thank you. Well, again, I'll be very honest. I would not describe ourselves to have broken even. So I really don't think Konectify has broken even. We're making money. We're enjoying some profits, but I don't think I want to describe that as having broken even. When we started in 2018, actually it was until the end of the year that at the end of the year is when we got our first client. So 2018 was just one of those flat years where we are just trying to give life to this concept. And then in 2019, that is last year, we started having clients, then referrals, then clients, then referrals. We were making money, but a lot of that money actually was going to the programmers. Because like I mentioned, my partner and I, none of us are programmers. And so we used to develop people's concepts using our programmers and paying them. And we never used to pay ourselves at first. It's actually at the end of last year that we actually started sort of enjoying money ourselves as the main partners. I'd say 2020, I don't know if it's strange enough, 2020 has been that year for us. We've enjoyed a lot of sales this year than any other year, actually than 2019 and 2018 combined. And I'd honestly say we are receiving feedback from those emails that I mentioned we used to send. Now people are calling back saying, you sent us an email last year, blah, blah, blah. We begin to have conversations. Clients that we spoke with last year are calling us this year. Then we are getting meetings, they convert into sales. I'd say this year we have started to pay ourselves in a way that would say we are making money as directors. So for that reason, I would not describe ourselves to have broken even, though it's almost 2.5 years since we started.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Cliff, for that. I'm excited to hear that this year has been a good one for you. I want to assume because you're in the tech industry. And so I'll go to my first question. Okay, so technology has influenced a lot, market trends and consumer behavior and all these things. So Mercy, I think, has put a question on the general group chat. All of you have spoken about, first, she appreciates the diversity in the panelists. Thank you, Mercy, for that. It's been a broad and amazing spectrum. Then she's asking if word of mouth is sustainable, because most of you have spoken about word of mouth. And is there Are you using any digital interventions? I think, Koki, you spoke a bit about website and optimization of your books. How is word of mouth, is that all that has been enough for you guys, or you've used some digital platforms, given what I've just said about technology and consumer behavior? You can go ahead, Rachael.
Thank you. I guess it also depends on the product you're selling. Like for us, word of mouth is just not enough. Hence why you have to learn more about how do you market your product online. Being on all social media platforms, mainly Instagram and Facebook, how do you do sponsored ads that get traction to your page? And the thing about going social media way is at first you won't get the results like immediately. Like a mentor of mine says, you first have to be ready to build the relationship with your online customers. You do posts, you do things that just to get you out there for people to know you before you actually start seeing the actual returns in terms of guys asking for products and you actually making sales. Just to add something on probably the word of mouth, one thing that has worked for us, and I think it's one thing that I encourage everyone who I come across in business, is always get feedback from your clients. Whether if it's someone, for instance, if it's my loyal customers who are ordering cake for the 50th time, or it's a first-time client, I always get feedback. You will pick your cake the next day. I'll be like, hey, was the cake satisfactory? Because one thing that does is the client, whether it's someone who's been there for the longest haul, they feel like, you know what, you're concerned about my satisfaction as a client. Did I really get to enjoy whatever it is I gave out? And it also helps you improve yourself. You won't always get good feedback. So what do you do with the bad feedback? Have a plan on how to handle that. You know, if it is someone who probably their expectation was not met, how do you recover? Do you give them a discount on their next order? Do you send them cupcakes to compliment, or to just say, you know, this is it or that? But feedback is really key, because with feedback, you know if you're doing well or not, and you improve yourself, because it's a learning process. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Rachael, before you just finish speaking, there's somebody else who, Rachael, your namesake, is also asking, can you touch on partnerships with influencers? Reaching out to them, you know, to market one's product or service, it seems to be very popular. I agree. Do you have a response? You have a response?
Sorry, please come again.
Okay, partnerships. Touch on partnerships in regard to influencers. Your take on reaching out to influencers, you know, to market your product or service. So I think we're looking at, when you go online, there's a lot of, I don't want to name names, but people who are marketing other people's products. And they're, it
works. I think my mentor actually uses that for her product. She has someone who is in the food industry, and I think she does a monthly pay. Personally, I've not tried it yet, but it works. I even know of someone still in the food industry who does weekly. Every week, she markets 10 or so brands. So if you want her to market you on a brand, you pay, I think it's $1,000, and you get visibility. And I believe that works. Yes.
Yeah. I think also a comment from our end, and at Ngamia, and this is a topic we've battled about. I think one, it depends on the product or service, but there's also the angle of, you know, brand ambassadors. So who can walk into a room, for example, Cliff, you're in IT, who can walk into a room and sell this product and get investors? So I do agree, it could work, it couldn't, but that's why we're having this conversation. So different things, different growth hack methods would work for different people. Yeah.
Mona, if I could add something else, one thing I've learned is you have to test. You have to test what works and not. You can, you might actually try something, it works. You might try something else, it doesn't work. But be willing to take the risk to test. Don't be afraid to use money again, because it's what works for cake culture might not work for another cake business. What works for another cake business might not. You're in the same industry, but the methods you're using work differently depending on where you are and whatever product it is you have.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So I'll request Koki also to give us comments on the same. And then I think after these questions, then we'll give our parting shots based on time. This conversation could go on and on. I feel like the time is not enough, but we have to stick to what is stipulated. So Koki, go ahead.
Thank you. On the question whether referrals are sustainable, I think I want to say it depends. The thing about referrals is you've already bypassed a whole lot. It helps you reputation-wise. Someone comes to you at that level for their reputation's good. It's basically the best kind of marketing without jumping all the hoops of, hey, look at me, get me, pick me. So it has its momentum. It adds to the momentum. The thing though, I have also had to use social media marketing, and that has helped in, there's a way when you learn what works for you for your brand with social media marketing, it starts that chain reaction of adding other people who, even though they don't buy your product, will talk about it because they've seen the consistency and in your product and also in your content. I'm not so sure if Rachael mentioned it, but I know for me, the reason why, as much as I'm a publisher and Kizuri Books does the whole publishing thing, I added a book club is because I realized always saying, hey guys, buy my book, buy this, can be very annoying, honestly. And I know it because I'd be like, oh gosh, it's that time when, at the end of the week or at this point midweek where I have to tell people, hey, give me your money in the nicest way possible. Because it's business. So having another way to do 80% content and then 20% selling has really helped. But you also get referrals. It's not just from the people who've bought, but then it's the people who've seen you, who know about you, that can refer your product or whatever content to someone else who they believe will be helped by it. So it has power, but it depends on, again, your product and then also the goal that you're trying to achieve. Because at a certain point, maybe with either referrals from social media marketing or from a product, the thing would be maybe widening your widening your customer base or widening the people who know you. Who will be customers later. That's also the power of social media. So with content that you're churning out, everything, the whole thing, I know even nowadays people talk about having funnels with your content plus your newsletter and just having everything funnel into the main goal, which is selling. Though it adds up eventually because it all becomes about retaining customers and then referrals because people know about you in the first place. Because if I don't know about you, I won't buy from you.
All right. Thank you, Koki, for that. Dawn, I guess also Koki's model is very human oriented. So she has to literally speak to people and meet them. Again, different things work for different people. So Dawn and Cliff on the same. And then I think we'll have I've seen some few questions, but we may have to take them on social at Ngamia. So I'll just advise based on time. So Dawn, go ahead, and then Cliff.
Okay, I believe you're talking about how sustainable the referral model is. The truth is, it's there's an extent to what referral can do. Again, it lets you into the door, but then whatever it is that you do then speaks for itself. I'm more of a believer of allowing your work to speak for itself. Years ago, I went into a BMW dealership and I wondered why people did not come. The salespeople did not come to speak to me. I wasn't there to buy. In fact, I was in college. I had no money on me, but I had gone just to check it out and nobody came to speak to me or anything. And I got upset at some point. And on my way out, I asked one of the guys, why is it that you guys don't care? Is it that you've seen that I can't afford any of your cars? Then the guy looked at me very strangely and very firm. He said, sir, this is a BMW dealership. BMWs, we don't sell BMWs. BMWs sell themselves. And I left there with a lesson that day that when you do something and you do it right, it sells or speaks for itself. So my advice to anybody who is trying to do anything as far as business is concerned, do whatever it is you can to the best of your ability. It's gonna sell itself. Yes, having people talk about what it is that you've done is a great thing. Referrals are great things. But even as you go out, look at the different products and the different things. I talked about now looking into more development work. The last 2 years alone, thinking through what it is that we're going to do. And this kind of will segue into one of the questions I saw, I think, Mercy asking, do any of these businesses do anything that is social? Do we ever get to return back? And I just want to answer and say this. I've taken some time thinking through what the next phase of my life should look like. And one of the things that I have now more focused on is, especially in my industry, there is a lot of greed in my industry, where developers have been developing homes and selling them at double or 2.5 times their actual price. When you really look at that and you look at where we are as a nation, there is something that is completely off. So I started to ask myself, what if we put together the right minds, the right groups, and the right thinking? Can we actually put out a product in the market that is actually worth what people are buying? Not 2-3 times its value. Give them value for their money, so that if you can build a house and instead of selling it at 10 million shillings, you can sell it at 4 million shillings, the same exact house, looking very good in the right parts of town. Will you have done the nation a service or a disservice? And then do that and replicate it. Even if you made 100,000 on every unit and you did 10,000 units, you will still make money. Give people the right product at the right value. Give them what it is that they require. Kenya now, I believe, we are a bit north of about 36,000 mortgages that have been issued in this country since the country's independence till today. From that time till today, only 36,000 mortgages have been issued. Why? Because the banks are greedy. When you go out to get a mortgage, you're going to be charged 14, 15, 16% on that unit. That same unit, you're going to be paying for it for the next, maybe 20 years, and you probably have paid maybe 3 or 4 times that value. So I've spent my time figuring out, how can I get someone into a home with the same exact money they are paying for their rent, and within 20 years, that home becomes theirs? Meaning, if I'm paying 30K on whatever unit I'm on, if I can come and move with my bags, with my everything, without a deposit, and I start to pay the same 30K, but that unit becomes mine within 10, 15 years, that is giving back to society. Just thinking a little bit and then being able to put the product out in a very affordable way. Thank you, Mona.
Nice. That's a very interesting angle, because most people would think about it, in the CSR aspect. What is it that you're giving back to society? So I like that. I like that you're fitting in your social component within the business and trying to make sure that everybody is able to access it at a good price and without, being duped and things like that. So that's a very interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing, Don. Cliff, on to you.
Well, thank you. Regarding the question as to whether word of mouth is sustainable, I think word of mouth is where everyone begins, especially for the startup. Word of mouth, you have to tell people about your product, your service. I look at it a bit differently. I think for me, word of mouth is always going to be there. For a start, you'll be the one speaking, and then eventually the clients you've served are speaking. So in that regard, I think the word of mouth is always there. I think branding, developing your brand is where you develop your brand. At first, you speak about your brand, and until at some point the brand speaks for itself, as Mr. Don has put it. And I believe that should be the way to go. It's like a baby. You're feeding the baby until the baby can feed himself or herself. So I think that is business. as you start off, you're doing a lot of work, and then as the brand develops, the brand does the rest. So I think word of mouth is a place to start. Yes, it will continue through referrals, but you should think in terms of building the brand to a position where the brand is actually speaking for itself. And at Konectify, actually, that is what we seek to do. We want to develop value such that in the future, Konectify as a company is speaking about itself. We're not really on the ground trying to tell people by word of mouth about what we do, because what we do speaks for itself. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I like that. So there was one other question on the group, but I think I will, Aline, our admin, I think is here. I'll ask her to connect Abigail with possibly Dawn after this, because we don't have too much time. So I just want to ask each and every one of the panelists to, kind of give us a parting shot. What would you tell the audience that's here today that have made time to listen to you and to listen to your experiences? Just a one-liner and encourage them, and then after that I can wrap it up. So we can go again in the circle. Rachel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you all for being here. I've learned as well. Thank you to the other panelists. I think one parting shot would be, it's a process. Anything is a process, it's a journey. Don't be too much in a rush to jump the hoop. Just go through the process. As long as you're making progress, however little, you will get there. Get help. There are people who've gone ahead of you. Get help, and they will lead you the way. Then don't be afraid for the days that are not so good, or the mistakes you make, or the experiences that are not too well. Just grow through them. With every experience, get the lesson and move to the next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Koki?
Thank you, Mona. Mine is to just say that be flexible. When you're flexible, everything ends up adding up. Whether you find yourself in a different industry, I've seen even some of the guys on the chat saying, this is what I've studied for, and then this is what I'm passionate about. When you're flexible, every single thing ends up being in your toolbox, and you'll be able to use it in one way or another in the field you're in or the field you'll be in. Some of us, I've heard the different panelists sharing how they started out in a particular place and now they're in this field that they're in. Who's to say that they'll be there for the next 10 years? I really believe in flexibility, and especially be a learner. If you'll be a learner, if you invest in being a master learner, there's no way you will not be able to succeed. So invest in learning and be flexible to the path that you'll find yourself on, because everything adds up. That's fine.
Thank you, Koki. We should all be flexible in terms of skill set and what else we could do. Dawn, your parting shot?
I am right up there with Koki. Life is getting different every day. I mean, 2020 is, if that's anything to go by, life has just transformed and things have started to change for all of us. My take for you is this. I mean, for many of us, we studied something and are doing something completely in the opposite direction. Do not be limited by what you studied. Do not be limited by the opportunities you've had in life. If you're passionate about something, figure out how do you turn your passion into something commercial. Figure it out. The reason why I sound like I have done so much based on my resume there is because I tried so many things. I never even began to tell you how much money I lost in horticulture, in growing flowers and shipping them to the Netherlands and all that. I lost so much money. But I'll tell you one thing. I have never looked back. I have never stopped. I've always known what I'm supposed to do. My biggest passion now is to put people into homes. That's my greatest passion. Now, every hoop I've had to jump over, every hump, every bump, every roadblock I've found did not stop me or has not stopped me from trying to get after my goal. Do not forsake whatever it is that you're passionate about. Figure out a way to go around the corner, make it happen. You have it inside of you. Maybe the next greatest idea will be invented by one of you, and you just don't know. Sometimes you'll fall into that thing by accident. Figure this one thing out, or know this one thing out. Every one of us was created for a purpose. If you stick to your purpose and I stick to mine, we will only have a better world. God bless you, and thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Don. A few comments on my personal chat. Pastor Don. Don is actually a pastor. Thank you for inspiring us today. There's some comments on the good vibe. So thank you for inspiring us today and for all that you've shared with us. Cliff, you could finish up for us.
Well, thank you so much for that, for having me. And I don't know if I knew Mr. Don to be pastor, I would not allow myself to be the last person to speak. I always thought, let the pastor close. But anyway, I think for me, my experience in 2016 was very bad, almost sunk into depression. And what life has taught me is learn to adapt. Learn to adapt. If you're listening to me out there as a young person, graduated recently, or graduated way back and not secured a job, think outside the box. And then always think about value. For me, my mantra is if you develop value, people will pay. That's what I believe. If you develop value, people will pay. And I also believe if you're competent, you'll be confident. And eventually things will come around for you. So think value. When you're looking for a job, think about what is your value? What are you bringing on the table? If they employ you, don't think about the salary. Think about what are you bringing on the table in terms of value. If you're an entrepreneur, don't think about money. Think about value. Money always follows value. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, everybody. I'll just do a wrap up. I don't want to water down what you've already said, but acquisition, how do our customers come in? You have to think about that. Activation, how do they enjoy the visit once they're in your spaces of establishment or whatever it is you're doing? Retention, how do you keep them coming back? Very important question. We've talked about referrals being a huge deal and the ups and downs of that and etc. And then revenue. Do something that leads you to the money, but more importantly, passion, as everybody has said. You have to nurture that to get the revenue. So I just want to thank you all. Thank you, Rachael. Thank you, Koki. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Cliff, for making time. We appreciate it. Thank you to all our audience for plugging in and for being a part of this journey. We'd like to host you for many more Ngamia webinars that would be relevant to you if you'd like. So you can send us emails on social at ngamia.africa. Give us your feedback. Tell us whether you'd like to hear a bit more of this. What other topics would you like to hear from us? And then, yeah, I think we can leave it at that. So have a good evening, everybody. Those who are in the diaspora, have a good rest of the day. And we shall see you all soon. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.